Looking to start a podcast but don't know where to begin? Look no further. The team at Dodge Media Productions has 20 years of experience as podcast listeners and observing the industry and 8 years experience in podcast production. We can help you take your podcast from idea to fruition, and we'll make the process seamless and easy. We'll help you with everything from recording and editing to hitting the charts on Apple Podcasts. So what are you waiting for? Contact us today and let's get started. DodgeMediaProductions.com.
You're listening to Dodge Movie Podcast. Your hosts are Christy and Mike Dodge, the founders of Dodge Media Productions. We produce films and podcasts, so this is a podcast about films. Join them as they share their passion for filmmaking.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Dodge Movie Podcast. This is episode 171, and we are going to talk about the 1991 film Point Break. We watched it on Peacock, but apparently it is also available on Paramount Plus. So if you subscribe to either of those services, you too can enjoy Point Break at no extra charge. The film is directed by Kathryn Bigelow, who also did Strange Days in 1995, The Hurt Locker in 2008, and Zero Dark 30 in 2012. It stars Patrick Swayze, Keanu Reeves, Gary Busey, and Lori Petty. The DP is Donald Peterman, who also did 1983's Flashdance and 1986's Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home.
The whale one.
The whale one, as it's also known, right? The writer is Rick King and Peter Liff. This is kind of fun. The skydiving scenes were done at Lake Powell, Utah. Oregon gets a little love here because instead of Bells Beach, Australia, they came up here to Ecola State Park in Cannon Beach and filmed that scene. It also takes place in Playa del Rey in LA for some of the surfer scenes. Neptune's Net on the Pacific Coast Highway is the beach cafe that I believe Johnny Utah walks into. They shot some in Malibu, Waimea Bay, and Oahu, Hawaii. They also did Culver City and Santa Monica and the Venice Pier as well. So a lot of LA love there for locations. The synopsis is an FBI agent goes undercover to catch a gang of surfers who may be bank robbers, as you know they always are.
Yes.
So only 3 taglines for you to choose from. They got a little more concise as the years went on, apparently. Point Break, 100% pure adrenaline.
Ooh, all right. Fair enough.
And then they were a little lazy on this next one. 100% pure adrenaline.
Okay. Don't want to waste those extra 2 words.
Right. 27 banks in 3 years. Anything to catch the perfect wave.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. The problem with that tagline is it kind of tips off who the bank robbers are before you've seen the film.
Right. But I don't think they don't really hide that from us, though. I mean, it's in the synopsis.
I guess.
And I'm sure the trailer, if you saw the trailer,
okay,
you knew.
I'll need to go look up Point Break trailer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's going to be difficult for you. Kick us off with your pickup line.
100% Utah. And that is spoken by the range officer. So it is followed by, if you didn't know already what you're getting in for, pure visual shorthand of what this movie is all about, because it shows Keanu Reeves. Then he gives this like super bicep muscular thumbs up. And now, mind you, he has just completed a shooting course, pouring rain, supposedly in Quantico, Virginia, yet wearing only a skin tight t-shirt. So you could maybe argue, yeah, you have to practice in the rain too, because sometimes the bad guys shoot at you when it's raining. But you would at least wear like the same windbreaker that the range officer has on, wouldn't you?
I would think so.
No. After Keanu spent 3 months doing curls, he's putting on a t-shirt and that's all you're getting.
So I feel like just based on the lighting, although the lighting in the beach is not it's not like the bright blue, like even in LA, it's like a muted blue. And a lot of the scenes take place at night, but I just felt like a lot of the surfing scenes, it was like they lowered the contrast. But I was going to say, I believe that I have a good feeling that Oregon also stood in for Quantico.
that looked a lot like it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So what did you think of the scenes in what was supposed to be Malibu? I mean, I guess the scene where Gary Busey runs up and cuts one of the surfers' locks, that is like your stereotypical bright, sunny California day.
Right.
But I thought anytime they showed even like the real life surfers who were part of the gang, kind of the actors themselves are real life surfers, and they were acting as part of the gang. I feel like I'm not making any sense, but I just keep saying it and it still sounds like it makes no sense. But you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, they found actors who were really good surfers and cast them in supporting roles in the bank robbing surfer gang.
Thank you. And when they were surfing, didn't you feel like it was muted?
Yeah, I
maybe
mean,
I'm not using the right terms too.
So I don't know if they're trying to go with a haziness, like perhaps that part of town is hazy. I got the giggles. I was watching a broadcast show, and they were at a location somewhere in Southern California, and the commentator said, "Oh, look how gorgeous it is," and you couldn't quite see the foothills because of, well, it's not smog anymore. They'll tell you it's the haze. So I would say LA still has a lot of haze. Let's not call it smog. And
right.
So maybe they were attempting to capture realistically, if you were surfing at Huntington Beach or something, that it wouldn't be as clear as Hawaii, where it's clearer and it's more saturated, the bright blue, and the ocean there near Long Beach is not particularly pretty. So it's possible that's what they were going for, right?
So this is a big fave of yours.
Oh, yes.
We did your pickup. And is it the kind of cheesy campiness?
Yeah. So part of the magic of this film.
Yeah.
Right.
By the way, I love it too.
Right. It is of its era, such an action film.
Yeah.
Right. But what makes this wonderful, I believe, is I don't think Kathryn Bigelow set out to make it a comedy, but it is so stereotypical and cliched and cheesy and over the top that it's fun. I don't want to say it's so bad that it's good, because it's not a bad film.
No, it's not.
But I think she set out to just make an action film, and she landed it perfectly. She hit every checkbox you could possibly have. So a movie about surfing would be adrenaline filled, and a movie about skydiving would be adrenaline filled. But a movie with both, that's just ludicrous, right? There's chase scenes, there's foot chase scenes, there's car chase scenes, there's surfing, there's skydiving, there's gun battles, there's pretty girls. It's got everything. It's just like you took everything you could possibly want and jam it into one thing. So you know what it reminds me of? It's what happens when you take a 10-year-old to the froyo place and you let them put whatever they want on their sundae. It's a spoon of everything.
So I feel like, I looked up, Die Hard was 88, Lethal Weapon was 87, Beverly Hills Cop was 84. So those are all like, cops and robber kind of movies, but with a strong comedic aspect. And so you're saying that those, like especially Beverly Hills Cop, that was purposefully funny because we have Eddie Murphy as the cop. So he's injecting humor in.
Right, he's a comedian hired to give funny lines. Oh, banana tailpipe
And then
trick.
Mel Gibson's character you referred to, I believe last week in our episode, that, there was a little bit of crazy going on.
Right.
And so that added humor.
Yeah, but I would say that movie is more dramatic, right? But okay.
And then Die Hard give Bruce Willis lines to say that purposely are set out to be funny.
Right. So
you're saying the difference is there was nothing intentionally meant to be funny. A lot of the lines.
Yeah, I don't think that there's nothing that it's not a joke, but when he shouts, "I am an FBI agent," that's kind of funny.
Because he's taking himself so seriously.
Right. Yes. And I'm sure that Keanu is doing exactly what he's directed to do. Like I said, this film to me is unintentionally hilarious because it is so kind of, it's everything all about these films, but 120%, right?
So are you laughing at Johnny Utah or with? You're
a little
laughing
both,
at?
A little both, right? so like the scene where he's chasing Patrick Swayze as Bodhi with his mask on, and he falls and hurts his knee. And then he does what we all do when we're disappointed. He fires 16 rounds into the LA.
Straight up into the air over his head.
Right. In downtown LA. Not even one. He
No.
empties the entire magazine.
Yeah.
Yeah, as you would.
Would there be charges brought against you as an officer if you discharge your weapon?
I think there would be questions, but if I did that, yes, there could very well be charges for discharging your weapon inside city limits. And so you look at Pappas, played by Gary Busey, right? Again, the classic crazy guy like Mel Gibson played.
I was just going to say, now was Gary supposed to be funny?
That's a good question. Possibly so, because he was so outrageous, right? And we see it like, I love the visual shorthand that tells you what you're getting in for. He's complaining about Utah with the blindfold on, the old gag.
You're right.
And then when he jumps in the pool, he doesn't just hop in the pool. He has to do some weird somersault, but it's not like super ninja-like.
Sideways.
Yeah, it's just kind of nutty. And of course, costuming got involved. When we put him in the Aloha shirts, then we know he's a wild and crazy guy, right?
And this, I'm trying to, okay, so a little digression. When he was on The Apprentice, which was much, much later, like early 2000s or something, I don't know.
Right.
That's when we truly discovered that apparently his brain was very hurt in that motorcycle accident.
Yeah, kids wear a helmet.
Yeah. Do you think we knew this in 19?
We did not know this.
We didn't know how kookaburra Gary was.
And you mentioned Lethal Weapon. So Lethal Weapon was filmed before the accident. And so we knew him as Joshua, Mr. Joshua, I think was the character name there. And so he'd done Buddy Holly earlier in his career, but then we'd just seen him as this like bad guy. And so we were, I think, still thinking that we didn't realize how much of his kind of delivery and demeanor was caused by the brain injuries, right?
But he almost died. It was serious.
Well, he believes he did die.
Oh, that's right.
So, but then as I forget which actor it was that said it, but it's acting brilliance with the sandwiches. Utah, get me 2.
Yeah, that apparently was ad-libbed, and Keanu loves that part.
Oh, everyone does.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, but like I said, the old guy who eats like horrible food, this is all just completely kind of
but like
over the top, leans into itself.
You're right, because that just proves the point, because we're looking over the shoulder of the person making the sandwiches, or at least taking Keanu's order. And over his shoulder, we see the bank robbers going
into
They're
the bank.
missing it. Like, how did she not intend on that being funny?
Right. Like,
that's a gag that we see all the time in films where the oblivious person has their back, but the audience, I mean, I feel like we see that in all of your big sitcoms, Modern Family, and, this gag of the unknowing person and the thing that they don't want to have happen or is happening right over their shoulder past them that the audience can see.
So Hitchcock said that suspense is when the audience knows something that the characters don't. And my guess is that scene was intended to be suspenseful, but it's comic because he's standing right there and he's a cop and he doesn't look around while he's waiting and notice, oh, this car screeches to a halt.
Because the whole reason they're there is they were on a stakeout
for that bank to see that bank get robbed.
So if you did
put your eyeballs on the thing, and then so if they say, oh, well, Gary Busey is supposed to be watching the bank, but he's reading the comics in the newspaper, he is now a comically bad cop. So what I'm saying is, was not intentional, and I'm not saying a bad thing at all. It so embraced everything you could possibly. Like I said, surfing wasn't enough adrenaline. We got to put in skydiving, right? And I don't know if most people realize, but this movie kind of a little bit brought surfing back into the public eye. But skydiving was not a thing before this film.
Really?
Oh, this was, I think, at least in my experience of that era, this was the first film to have skydiving in it. And it was such a key component. And a lot of people went out to learn to skydive because they saw how cool it was when Swayze was doing the jackknife twisty thingy when he left the airplane.
Well, and apparently he did a bunch of jumps. He was just like on, evenings and weekends during the shoot. He did like 30 jumps. And then insurance found out about it. And they were like, you cannot jump anymore. And he talked him into that very last scene where he jumps out without a chute.
No, he has a chute, but it's like one long shot.
Yeah.
Because
that's
from the doorway, the cameraman
that's really him.
So, and then, okay. So he's got the long hair. He's got the Jesus beard. So, but he's also philosophy wielding combat expert, just like Roadhouse, right? Mm-hmm. So they knew this works. This is
true.
Box office gold. So, and so let's just be honest. We all kind of like Bodhi. He's a bit of a dick.
Exactly.
But we all kind of like him. He's super cool.
And it's apparently did the producers want him to play Johnny Utah, but he was like, no, I want to be Bodhi. And they were like, it makes total sense because Patrick is kind of like that spiritual kind of, you can see him like having patchouli oil and meditating, like when he's like, it's awesome. And so Keanu, this is about the time frame I think that he was doing Bill and Ted. And so we hear that when he reports, I caught my first tube today, sir. I mean, that's totally Ted Theodore Logan. Let's be honest. He was like that young, clean cut. He could deliver that. I don't think Swayze would have delivered in that role. You needed him to look like, because Keanu pulled off the overachiever, right? Mm-hmm. And now and the FBI, they're no fooling around, right? Those guys are real serious, not a lot of sense of humor, but super darn good at their police work. So I think John C. McGinley, right? Again, that's the character, the captain who yells at people, right? Right.
No people skills at all. He just yells at people. We had one of the scenes that we missed from Inside Man is the penis measuring jurisdiction scene. Well, who's in charge of this bank robbery? There's that arguing and like the one partners and they're, and then there's the whole thing at the stakeout where they have to be at night. And so the other guys are making fun of them. You have to be here all night, pee in a cup. So all of this stuff is just so the horrible, like ratty bad guys, including at least one member of the Red Hot Chili Peppers who live in this decrepit house that somehow have these two super hot chicks that want to hang out with them, even though they eat like Cheerios with beer on it. Like, why would those women be hanging out with these idiots?
Right.
Doesn't matter. It's the 90s. Got to put some chicks in bikinis. It is everything you could possibly want in an action film in one film.
So if this film hadn't occurred, would we have seen Keanu in Speed?
I don't know if you would have.
Speed came 3 years later. I don't think so. I think this one set him up as...
Right. I think he played Johnny Utah in Speed, basically. Right? I mean, immediately as you say that, I see in my mind's eye at the beginning of Speed, he's getting like coffee and a bagel or something.
And over his shoulder.
Yeah. And like something happens and he goes out and he runs down the street and he even like runs as like, he's got this kind of bow-legged run that's like action figure young guy. I mean, it is, yeah. So I think you're right. Speed doesn't happen. Or at least he's not in Speed without this film.
Right. Okay. Lay it on me. What else do you love? I mean, we're just going to go face down in how much.
Okay. I saw this film in the movie theater with Rosser. I remember this vividly. Right.
That's fun that you have like a visceral memory.
Yeah. Neither one of us really wanted to surf or skydive after seeing this film, but we kind of did a little bit,
right. You wish you wanted to.
Right. Like I knew I was too lazy and cheap to do it, but okay. There's just these lines that are just classic. Surfing's the source, man. It'll change your life. So the 10-year-old kid somehow is working at a surf store instead of going to school. Don't know how that works. And he's delivering lines of wisdom. Then Lori Petty is, this is the pinnacle of her
name.
Yeah, I keep wanting to call her Lori Perry, but that's not it. It's a different character. This is Lori Petty's peak of her career. She was in a league of her own.
Girl.
No, this is the best. This
is better. Now, what I did love is she's an anti like normally Tyler is her name in the film. Normally they would have gone with like the blonde, right? Like,
oh yeah.
But I loved her casting because it was more believable that this group of guys would allow her to be one of them. And I think any of the other, like your quote unquote, like beach babe, they would allow them to be there, but they wouldn't take them serious as a surfer.
Right. And so for rom-coms, you want your lead to be super pretty, but girl next door. This one, she had to be super pretty, but tomboy. And she landed it perfectly.
And she's beautiful. I mean, she's got these piercing blue eyes.
Good golly. Although, as I did mention, there was a scene in there where I realized she could play Emilio Estevez's sister. She had the same like eyes and chin as Amelia. But the scene where she changes into her Daisy Dukes just on PCH.
Oh, hot.
Oh, yes. Super duper hot. And they do this night surfing thing where Keanu does have a line which is supposed to be funny, I think, which is, yeah, visibility is highly overrated. I don't know. Surfers would have to tell me if it's reasonable to go surfing at night. Generally, you don't do aquatic things without lighting, right? You can get lost or injured.
Especially because there are sharks down in Malibu.
But they shot it day for night. So it's like, okay.
Still, though.
It's pretty good, but you can understand why the actors didn't kill themselves. But that's like, so Bodhi has his house and he's like, what's mine is yours. So he's totally freed from the bounds of physical possessions and things, right? And so he's even willing to share Tyler with Johnny Utah, right? And they're all somehow, they don't explain how they have money. Well, in this case, it's because they're bank robbers.
Yeah.
But then nighttime football, that makes no sense at all. They have 24 trucks there running with their lights on.
Yeah.
There are more trucks than there are people.
That's a famous spot. Did you recognize that spot of sand?
I did not.
It is the same beach that they used for the soccer game in Karate Kid.
Well, that was daytime. So nighttime, they converted it to a football beach.
Oh, I guess maybe them playing soccer was it? Because they had a bonfire. There was a night
scene.
They
did, but I thought the soccer was earlier.
Oh, okay.
So they transition maybe the beach, right?
Right.
So there's that. There's, like I said, there's a foot chase, including, luckily no dog was harmed, but the famous throw a dog at another person in the car chase scene.
Yes.
Or
They
a foot
threw
chase.
a fake dog. So the real dog was not harmed. In fact, the real dog was gently tossed by a trainer into the actor's arms.
Aw.
And from a distance of 1.5 feet. And the dog was prepped for this and he was comfortable with the action. And the ground was even padded just in case he fell. And so the toss was completely successful and no puppy was harmed. And it was a fake dog that Johnny Utah kicked.
And I'd like to think that it was somebody like John DiMaggio who did the dog yelp sound.
Right,
the dog
right,
wasn't
right.
even heard enough for the yelp.
Right. Patrick was hurt, though. He cracked 4 ribs while filming the surfing scenes.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Right. And the football scene, he didn't say anything to anybody, but the set doctor, he blew out his knee. And so it blew up like 3 times the size of a normal knee. And so the set doctor had to drain it. And
okay, so is this after Dirty Dancing? Because I know he messed up his knee in Dirty Dancing. So that might be. And there's just all kinds of... So the bad guy, right, at one point when he's going to start the bonfire, he has a bottle of lighter fluid. Now, as most of you know, lighter fluid is designed to get out of the bottle onto the fire.
Mm-hmm.
So it has this flip top with a spigot. And instead the guy stabs his knife into it and then shakes it on top of the fire, putting less lighter fluid on the fire than if he just used the lid that was right there.
But it looks cool.
Yeah, exactly. That's the film all together. Right.
Dirty Dancing was in 1987.
Yeah, so this was post Dirty Dancing, so he probably had some collateral damage from that.
Well, plus he was like a dancer and like he rode horse. Like this, there's Patrick Swayze was the Tom Cruise of back then. He did all his own stunts. Like he's a man's man, and he's going to no stunt double, even though he did have a stunt double.
So, but then there's a lot of things where you should maybe ask questions, right? Like if Johnny Utah is going to go undercover, Why would he use the name Johnny Utah?
Right. One of them recognizes him from his glory days being a football star.
On national television. Use your same name, right? And then if you were a Division I like quarterback, you would know not to play football. Because again, folks, I have never played pickup football against a D1 player. I have, however, played against like a D3 player. And here's the thing. They're so much better than us, right?
Right.
It's obvious, immediately obvious that they're in a different league. So he would know not to do that. And then if he had a bum knee, he would especially not do that.
Well, and then when they do go to the house where the pit bull lives, I can't believe that he wouldn't have worn some kind of face covering and then there was another time when, I think it was when they were doing the stakeout. And because when he finally does realize that they're robbing the bank, he goes running for them. And it was just like, you just blew your own cover.
Right. So again, this is one of those things, shut up, Affleck, right?
Okay.
Don't look too closely. But I'm saying this is part and parcel of this kind of film, right? Is all of this. And there's a hidden gem in here, though. I really, really enjoy this. At one point, Bodhi says to Johnny Utah, fear causes hesitation, and hesitation will cause your worst fears to come true.
Isn't that full speed is half injury or something, basically?
Oh, that's kind of close, but I was actually thinking Gary Busey is famous for acronyms. And the one that I always remember is false expectations appearing real. He says that's what fear stands for. And I was like, oh, this is awesome because it's got a Buseyism right in it.
Well, you know that he was doing that all the time on the set. And so they probably just wrote it in.
Yeah. But there's a line there where I did not catch this the previous 8,000 times I've watched this film. Johnny Utah uses the line, after you, Alphonse, I insist. And that's a callback to some comic from gosh only knows when. That's something where some 50-year-old nerdy screenwriter, I think, wrote that in there. I challenge that Keanu had any idea what that quote was. But they don't treat him like an FBI agent. So one thing that kind of doesn't work for the plot, if you follow this, so there's a part where Bodhi makes him participate in a bank heist. And so then it's like, oh, he gets cuffed and he's going to be arrested and all this. Okay, I don't actually think that's going to happen. I think an FBI agent who is forced to participate in a bank robbery, when his friends show up, he says, they have this hostage and they forced me to go along or they would kill her. And they'd say, oh, okay, where do we find the hostage? End of story. I just don't think it's going to be like, oh, well, you're obviously one of the dead president bank robbers because we saw you here. Like, no, you saw me 2 hours ago in the break room. I'm not a bank robber. So, but that's necessary to get him in the car with Pappas so that they can go to the airport and have that shootout. Again, lots of shootouts. Now, the good news about this film is people do die when they get shot. So that's pretty realistic.
Yeah. So I spoke of broken ribs. Was there any head trauma in Point Break?
Yeah, there was a little bit. So Utah gets punched while surfing because he took a guy's wave, which I only know surfing from watching movies, but apparently that's a punchable offense.
Big no-no.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I feel like some of the surfing competition reality shows we've watched, that's a thing.
Yeah, I get that feeling too, but I want to tell the listener that I have no personal experience with surfing, so I can't verify that.
Okay.
Warchild and his friends get punched a lot outside the shower when Bodhi comes to save Johnny Utah from getting whooped. Bodhi pistol whips Utah at one point, which again tends to cause damage. Pappas punches Harp, played by John C. McGinley, who, by the way, fun trivia, looks a lot like a teacher I had in high school who went on to become principal of that school. So shout out to Mr. Rouse. I think he looked like John C. McGinley. And then lastly, Bodhi and Utah have a fight and they punch each other a lot.
And we do have a romance in this film.
Smoochie, smoochie, smoochie. We do. Tyler and Johnny Utah.
Which that adds an extra layer. I don't think, it's almost like Bodhi kind of says like, yeah, I've had her. Here, you have her.
Yeah, it's
like there would still be feelings and jealousy there. He wouldn't be so cool.
Simultaneously progressive and regressive at the same time.
Right. How about a driving review?
Well, there are quite a few vehicles in here. So as you may recall, I talk a lot about cars can be like costuming. It's how you can tell us about the characters. So Tyler drives a red convertible that I had to look up. It's actually not a Porsche 356. It's a clone that's made by an Italian company called Intermeccanica. So that shows that she's cool enough to want a Porsche 356, but poor enough to not be able to afford it. Utah drives a 1970 Mach 1 Mustang, which shows that he's cool because he likes muscle cars. It appears to be primered, which would say that he's even cooler because he's in the midst of restoring it. But an FBI agent probably could afford a real paint job. But anywho, I will say that there's the bad guys with Anthony Kiedis, that crew. They drive this 1967 military Jeep vehicle. So it shows that they're bad dudes because they don't have a roof, I guess. And it's like militaristic. I'm not sure exactly what that's supposed to say. There's a part where the dead president switch their maroon Lincoln Town Car for a yellow Chevelle, which is a much better getaway car. So then I start wondering, why did the dead presidents only get crappy American like domestic sedans for their getaway vehicles? Seems like they could, if you're stealing a car, steal something more useful. Maybe that's why they get caught. One of the other kind of tropes is the hubcap losing rear-wheel drive oversteer turns in the chase scene. I mean, that to me says like 60s, 70s, 80s car chases are tons of oversteer, that back end swinging out as they go around the turn. And then the great thing about the older cars where those hubcaps bounce off and you see them in slow-mo as they bounce through the shot. That's awesome. Credit to them. The radiator gets damaged and the car really does let loose all of its fluids and stop. So that was realistic there. And then this one is I'm going to have to defer to somebody with a little bit more knowledge about skydiving, but I think that Beach King Air that they skydive from, I think that's actually probably an aircraft that is used for skydiving. But I
bet it was because Patrick was using it 30 times over the course of the...
Yeah, you know, he seems like the kind of guy that would then get his pilot's license too.
Right, exactly. All right, shall we go to the numbers?
Let's go to the numbers.
All right, before we go into the hard numbers, 20th Century Fox had made plans for a sequel to this film to be released in the summer of 1993. In fact, a script had been written and it was in pre-production. Despite the film grossing $90 million worldwide, the studio decided to scrap that project. I'm so sorry, Michael. Although, could it ever live up to the I mean, sequels are difficult.
That's
right?
true because they used both skydiving and surfing in the first film.
Right.
They didn't have much left.
And so, like, many years later, we got one, but was it as good as this one? Right. So maybe it's best that this one just stand alone.
Yeah, that's okay too. It can just be, it can be what it is. Yep.
Yeah. All right. This film had a budget in 91 of $24 million. It made domestically 43, so double, so yay. And then worldwide 83 million, which adjusted for today would be like 110.6 million. So definitely like we said, a success. It gets a 7.3 out of 10 on IMDb.
That's a crime. Who are those people?
Right. Now this is going to hurt even more. Only 69% of critics called this one.
Oh, I can see that because sometimes the critics have their nose in the air and they're swings a little too tight.
Yes, and audiences liked it much more at 79%.
Right.
This one is a long one. 2 hours, 2 minutes.
It is, but it doesn't feel that long.
Nope.
Because it's so credit to Bigelow on this because she really made it come across a quick pacing, and I think it's an unintentional comedy, but I laugh because I love.
Yes, it is rated R and it is listed as an action crime thriller. No comedy in that typing at all. It is a Largo Entertainment JVC Entertainment. Remember when the same company that made your
video cassettes,
VHS tapes also had their own division of filmmaking?
Wow. And now TikTok, I guess, is the equivalent.
Right. Keanu won the award for Most Desirable Male at the MTV Awards that year.
I don't have a thing for Keanu, but I can live with that. right?
Yeah, you sign off on that?
Yeah.
I think I said we watch this on Peacock. So let's see what we're going to watch next week.
Moneyball. Superfan Crystal. Moneyball.
All right, everybody, have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and never forget,
Dodges never stop, and neither do the movies.
Thanks for listening to Dodge Movie Podcast with Christy and Mike Dodge of Dodge Media Productions. To find out more about this podcast and what we do, go to dodgemediaproductions.com. Subscribe, share, leave a comment, and tell us what we should watch next. Dodges never stop, and neither do the movies.